the union partner, that is the Africa Telecommunications Union, has the Secretary General in our midst at the moment. And he has 2 other commitments to attend to from now. So as much as possible, would like to hand over the mic to him to give us about the meeting and the commitment of the Africa Telecommunications Union to child online protection. And whilst at that, I would like to acknowledge Benga Sessan from the Paradigm Initiative, Frederick S. Lane, whose background you get to know in the course of the discussion, Dr. Sefako Komabu Pomei, who is based in US, so she asked for the morning. Madam Miska Ozioma from Nigeria, who is an educator. And our young participants, we have Kabna and Lenana from Kenya. So I now hand over the microphone to the Secretary General of the African Union, Africa Telecommunications Union, to give his remarks before we proceed to the other things. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ao. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening in some parts of East Africa already. I have some written remarks which I will share with Ao later on. But I pray that you indulge me after delivering these remarks. Also speak off the cuff a bit from the bottom of my heart. And so I'm glad to join you today for this conversation. This is an environment that I'm most comfortable with as a father and as a person that believes in rights not only for children, but for every human being as well. What excites me really even more is that we are in the space of dialogue. And my late grandfather used to tell me that where people are dialoguing, nothing goes wrong. And so I must admit that it is my personal conviction that dialogue is the most critical vessel for delivering transformation. I therefore take this opportunity to thank Child Online Africa for organizing this particular webinar and conversation. Today, as we mark 30 years of the African Charter on the rights and welfare of the African child, I'm particularly happy that this webinar on child safety has come at a very symbolic time when the world has been forced to conduct most of its activities online as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. Perhaps we may never get another opportunity to progressively discuss the question of online safety for children, particularly in our lifetime. And so, whereas the virus has brought untold suffering to the humankind, including deaths to our dear loved ones, it's also given us an opportunity to, have a conversation about certain things that pertain to our development. I recognize the fact that with the closure of our schools in most countries, ICTs are enabling children to learn and express themselves as well as explore their creativity. They are also enabling children to cope psychologically during this pandemic by virtually connecting them with their friends and peers. And perhaps that is the more important bit for the children. On the other hand, the increased use of ICT has led to increased online exploitation at a new height in the online safety for children. Loopholes have been magnified, gaps have been identified, and the effectiveness of online protection policies and measures put in place have been brought into question. It is our duty as caregivers and members of the community and policymakers to protect children from all forms of abuse, including violence, exploitation, and discrimination, in addition to ensuring that the child's best interest is the primary consideration in any matters affecting them. To combat and mitigate the negative effects of ICTs on children, there is need for enhancing key collaborations with strategic actors that support this direction. In 2019, the ATU conducted a country assessment on child online protection in Africa. And according to the survey, we realized that there's still a lot to do in Africa. Indeed, many countries have not yet implemented the Child Online Protection national legal and regulatory frameworks, and they need to be supported to train professionals and launch awareness campaigns for both parents and children. Our objective was to identify the main issues and assess the needs of our members to help them address child online protection issues accordingly, in collaboration with our partners and regional stakeholders, but also to create an interactive platform for members and stakeholders to share experiences and best practices. Consequently, I look forward to a discussion that shall examine this entire scope and provide vision of the kind of reviews of legal frameworks to ensure that laws that protect children are enacted and that such laws are extended to protect children online. With the existence of laws, other actors such as law enforcement, parents, stroke guardians, educators, civil society, and the ICT sector are empowered or will be empowered to protect more our children online. I'm therefore confident that the continuity and prosperity of this continent depends on these very structures. Accordingly, this generation, especially children in rural and underserved areas, are bound to benefit from digital literacy if properly handed over to them. I look forward to these discussions, and I encourage all of us to think of the African child beyond today, because they are indeed our present and our future. Now, before I close, I was speaking to colleagues of mine yesterday, and I work for an intergovernmental body. And the basis of our interaction with the membership and indeed with the private sector organizations that we deal with on a day-to-day basis would be to develop certain common standards based on best practices worldwide that we can then ask our governments to implement. And in that regard, I look forward to these discussions metamorphosizing at some point, and this will be my interaction with Madame Awo, that we need to invite more of our policymakers, more of our regulators, so that we bring them on board to have a candid conversation with individuals, with the civil society, in order to develop certain common standards in Africa that we can ask our governments to respond to in terms of implementation. And we can have, candid monitoring and implementation frameworks to which we hold our governments account. So I look forward to these discussions being the first in a series of discussions where the culmination will be a framework, a guideline, a recommendation to which we can hold our governments to account in terms of implementation. And so I look forward to further engagement with the organization in working in such an atmosphere to develop instruments that would lead to, where we hold our governments to account in terms of how they are registering progress in this regard. And so I want to thank you for listening to me. I want to thank each and every one of you for attending this webinar. And I want to thank each and every one of you who have contributed to its organization, and indeed for those that are about to speak, to share with us their perspectives with a view to having this in a series of webinars on the child online protection, which will culminate into either, an output that is a guideline, is a recommendation for African governments to implement. I thank you very much. Over to you, Awo.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. We are happy working with you. Your commitment and passion is commendable. So we hope to work further to advancing the cause of the African child and families by extension. Thank you so much. So on the outline, I'm supposed to give an overview of child online protection in Africa. This overview will be so brief because of the subsequent discussions that will take place. So this one will be focusing more on what we are doing, the policy aspect and then legislative or law enforcement aspect will be taken further in the subsequent discussions that we'll be holding in other forums. So essentially, the plan is to have the child develop in a holistic manner. And for us, 30 years of ratifying the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child is no joke. And having said that, from experience, I realized that the document focus is on 3 P's of the Convention on the Rights of the Child as well. So which is protection, provision, participation. And so what goes into provision, participation in order to create an enabling environment for the child or promote the best interest of the child is what we are focusing on as actors in the digital space. The image you are seeing is the cover photo of the Agenda 2040, which is Africa's framework for protecting children or promotion of child rights in Africa. So this is used together with the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. So that is what you can see, the Agenda 2040. And the slogan is fostering an Africa fit for children. When we talk about protection, what are we talking about? In terms of protection, we're looking at protecting the child from misinformation. I use misinformation here first because this COVID era has brought in a lot of issues. So many people are hearing all manner of things, all kinds of stories. Some are depressing and all of that. But to what extent are we ensuring that children are not being misguided or are not put in a panic mood in passing on that of information? Something we need to, it's important we want children at this time of the year that we are in so that they don't get distraught, they don't get disrupted, and they can focus more. So misinformation is one of the things we have to protect children from. Sexual grooming and exploitation, which UNICEF reports pointed to us that it's on the increase, especially during this lockdown. So it's also a source of worry to many of us working in the space. Creation and distribution of child abuse imagery. It will interest you to know that just now someone forwarded something similar to me, making WhatsApp. Extent are we protecting the children from that? Do we have mechanisms in place where these kind of contacts could be sent for them to be taking off? Do we have systems in place to deal with all of that? Those are things that we should be looking at. Then online dimension of child trafficking. We no longer have a situation where someone will pick your child in the street, but then children are being trafficked online. So how prepared are we in ensuring that that is not happening to children? conduct. Fred will be time based on the beat of children. Children become perpetrators of violence in the space themselves. But then, how informed are they that they are not falling prey to people who will take their images and work with them or misbehave with it in the long run? So that is also one of the things we would have to be paying attention to. Sexual exploitation in general. Sometimes adults are facilitating such things. So do we call that protection for the child in the digital space? In a contact, the fact that the child is in a Google Classroom, sometimes I think the early days of the Zoom classroom situation, people were being Zoom bombed. So they splash all kinds of images and videos on their platform. Those are all inappropriate contact situations that should be safeguarded. How positioned are we as Africans in dealing with that? Tribalism, yes, it's also a content which most people are advancing in the space now, teasing each other's language, teasing how people pronounce words, and all manner of things which should not be encouraged as digital citizens. The almighty consent. We use photos of children, post their full names with schools without consent. It is required under the law, even Article 10 of the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child says the child has a right to privacy. So privacy entails that if you want to use the child's photo, you want to post the child's name, you should be sensitive about how that is done. So there are minimum child protection standards. Who is adhering to them, or who is enforcing the rule on adhering to some of those things? Because by and large, we are creating digital footprint of children as either civil society actors or as workers in the space. And sometimes teachers are caught in the same web. They video children's conduct in the classroom and upload it without consent. It's important when we're doing some of those things or we want to share images of the children, consent. It's not about the mother you have to. your right is limited in that regard. So it's important we respect that right of children. Now, talk about provision. What do they need? I believe that for child protection online to be effective, we don't always have to act as protectors, but we need to also prioritize security. So how do we do that? Prioritizing security implies that we are giving the children the power. We're giving them what they need in order to navigate this effectively. Have we equipped them enough? How many of us run effective digital literacy or citizenship lessons in our ICT classes? It's very rare. So those are some of the things we should be prioritizing. The World Economic Forum listed 8 skills, digital skills that every 21st century child is supposed to have. If you download our resource on an introduction to digital literacy, you will see the 8 skills which are talked about, and then you kind of evaluate yourself to see. Those are the things to be given them. And the children should also be their rights in the space. What is expected, what is not expected. Those are lessons we should have. Reporting channels. Like I said, someone forwarded an inappropriate content to me right now. It's because maybe they are not familiar or they are not aware of some of the reporting systems in place. Some countries have channels for reporting. And I want to entreat all of us to prioritize reporting systems in Africa, because from one of Facebook's reports, it looks like Africans don't report incidents, which is not good enough. So if we are able to report, it's only then we can have issues addressed effectively. Learning resources and curriculum. How our lessons in the classroom now. It's not about teaching computer in abstract, ICT in abstract, but it's important we integrate the attitudinal and behavioral patterns of ICT in addition to the soft skills that we are teaching, they should also have a wealth of access and specialized information, which is the more reason why Sefako will be speaking to us today. Children with disability, how prepared are we for them? Can they access the space? Do they get abused? Yes, they get abused. How can they protect themselves? Those are we should be looking at. We have space for them to be creative, to explore, and all of that, in addition to the entertainment and leisure. So we cannot put aside the provision bit of child protection and just focus on protection. It's important we provide for them as well. How do they participate? Children are able to participate effectively when they have the skills. So if a child does not have the required skills to engage in a particular space, it will be very difficult for them to do that. So in an era where we don't even have the money to buy data, or we don't have a system in place to effectively, how addressing that to ensure that children have the right information? Scalable ways of consulting children about governance. There is Internet Governance Forum, which takes place annually, and I think quarterly as well. How many of us engage children in that kind of conversation in order to hear their side of the story? Their needs are very important, and it's only when they take part in this kind of discussions that they will be well equipped to participate effectively. User-friendly for their voices to be heard. Some of the call centers, when you call them, to call them as. So adult is afraid to call a call center to report an issue on a network. Imagine what will happen to a child. It is important we make the call center attendant behave in a child-friendly manner so as to receive reports and direct children to the right tools or systems available for them to seek redress. And in all our designs and implementation, it's important we prioritize the rights of the child. Even though we would prioritize their responsibility, we have a responsibility too. Frederick will be touching based on the responsibilities of the providers. And once that is done, by and large, we will all be doing our best in ensuring that children are safeguarded in the digital space. I would like to link this discussion to what has been put forward by the Africa Union Executive Council. 2018, we ran a campaign under the hashtag Online Safety for Agenda 2040. Agenda 2040, like I said to you, is the framework for the Africa Union. And one of the requests made to the Africa Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child is for them to scale up their safeguarding work to promote rights and welfare of children in the space, namely children's information, right to safety, informed choices, and digital literacy. So for me, that sums it up. We have an instrument that sort of backs the need for us to ensure that children are well protected in the digital space. We cannot be working in isolation anymore. We are, but then we have an online presence. So how do we ensure that we are safeguarding? Safeguarding implies that the whole environment, all settings that children are found in, is made trustworthy. So to what extent are we ensuring that? To buttress more on that point, the Broadband Commission put together a child online safety declaration, which countries are supposed to sign up to. And I would encourage any country listening, any organization, any civil society institution, any agency listening, to make the effort to signing up the Universal Declaration on Child Safety. This was brought out on the 1st of October 2019. The first thing it says is it's important we engage. We need to engage all the actors in the space to ensure that I think and is with framework. So the multi-stakeholder approach being adopted by ITU and other agencies is very critical. So at the lower level, it's important we also do the same to ensure that children are getting the best out of life. The next thing is proactively utilize available resources. Available resources in terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of machine learning tools, to ensure they are reducing the presence of child abuse imagery and other inappropriate content that will be harmful to the child by extension. So we shouldn't always assume that it is an adult space, but it's a space for children as well. So they are also consumers that should be prioritized. It shouldn't be the way it is at the moment, but then it's important we get them to do the right thing. And again, we investigate issues that come up. Some of the issues that come up are usually not investigated. We just gloss over them because either we don't have the capacity to investigate them, or it's either we don't have the tools or the system to do that. But in as much as we are opening ourselves or the space to doing protection of children, it's now our responsibility to ensure that the safe systems are all the settings that engage in both online and off. The next one is to tackle it. How do we tackle it? We tackle it from all angles, from regulatory perspectives, from legislation, from policy, which again, Fred will be touching base on policy, school-based policies for ICT. In Africa, I think the conversation has whether to ban cell phone use schools or not. And if it should be allowed, what are the guiding rules that should go with it? Those are some of the things that we will be doing. And then finally, how do we promote safety of children online? That borders on digital literacy, digital citizenship, making online safety a lifestyle or culture in the home, which is very, very important. So this is a broadband, in a nutshell, the broadband 5 key commitments. But in addition to the 5 key commitments, they also made mention of the fact that the digital space should be friendly and with the right cybersecurity measures in place. We also need to utilize the platforms to inform innovation and support public good. And children are part of the public good that we're talking about. Take leadership and proactively promote the cause of child safety. Yes, so if nobody is doing something in your country as far as online safety is concerned, you are being challenged from today to take leadership in that. The little conversation you could have with children about their digital footprint or online reputation will go a long way to helping them. And one of the reasons why we are having this session is also to build a community of practice around online safety. So it will only take us stakeholders to come together and discuss what the issues are related to children in the space in order to safeguard them. And our educational systems should also support the campaign that will promote safety of children in the space. I don't know why my slide is acting up. But an Africa fit for children will require, and those safeguards should be controlled by us. So it's important we are deliberate at doing all of that. It's important we are deliberate at putting in place policies for children and young people to be sure that they are protected. And I say to you, the time is now. So let's take action. Camacho simply means stay alert. So that is the hashtag we are using in addition to let children be children. Thank you so much for your attention. I will now be handing over the microphone to our young participants. I can see Lenana. And Lenana, could you tell us what you think should be done in the digital space to protect you as an individual online?
Well, I think that there should be restrictions, should be prohibited, like bad music videos, the 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 pornographic videos, like pornographic websites. I think they should be restricted, uh, so that the children cannot run off and go there. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Lenana. Do we have Kwabena in the room?
Yes.
Yes, please share your views on online safety for you as a young person. What is your expectation? Are you enjoying yourself online, or you feel that there's something that needs to be done to make it a lot more friendly for you?
Yes. These days, there are a lot of problems with social media. Like our friend here said, there are a lot of inappropriate videos and pictures which can set the youth on a wrong path. I think that we need to do more in order to stop such things from happening. It can change the ways of the youth. It can cause a rise in crime rates, rape, and a lot of things. Social media, it can be very influencing. If you don't take charge, something bad might happen.
Okay,
Hello?
so that's the more reason why you would want us to 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 do more to
Yes.
safeguard interest. Okay. Do we have Alberta in the room? Thank you,
Yes,
Kwabena.
please.
Alberta, could you share your perspective? What do you think? You are even you engage in robotics and a couple of other things. What is
Yes,
your
please.
impression about the space?
I think that most of the content posted on the internet is not child friendly, and it's put some kind of mindset in the children. So maybe I can be on the internet and all of a sudden some kind of activity just pops up. I want to see more. I want to know more. So I'll also go into it. And maybe what I'm going into, it can be pornographic stuff or something, and to change my mindset. And it will also increase the crime rate in the environment because I'm learning bad things from the internet and it's not helping me. Things that are supposed to be adult friendly and not child friendly are what we see mostly on the internet. So I would like the cybersecurity to be very strong, and also bans must be put on most of the things posted on the internet. Maybe from 18 years and above and 17 below, you're not supposed to watch this and stuff. So I think the cybersecurity should be very strong. And yes, that's my view.
Yeah, but just a quick follow. Don't you think that there is some restrictions already in terms of age restriction, or you don't come across that?
I do,
Do you
but
come across
then
things?
yes, I do, but then it's not really maybe like some sites like YouTube. Since you've already
Yeah.
since you've already given your details that this is the year you were born and stuff, they know that you've not gotten to this age limit. So they will ban you from watching some kind of stuff. But then since other sites don't know your age, the year you were born and stuff, you'll be able to access things that are not your age limit.
Okay, so I'm giving another round of opportunity for you, the young people, to express yourself in terms of adverts. Do you think adverts online advertisement, does affect you in any way? Maybe Lenana or Kwabena or Alberta or any other young person who wish to express himself or herself could let me know. I'm just checking to see whose hand is up. Do you come across advertisements that you feel should not be in your space?
Yes, please.
Could you cite an instance of that? Or do you have
Like,
an example to give?
yeah, like maybe I want to learn something on the internet. Then all of a sudden, this site pops out, which is not child friendly. Like I don't know the example to give, but then something that is not my age limit, they just bring it, and when you are skipping to, it's like more ads keep on adding up, like to it.
Okay, okay. If I've not called you to speak now, can we regulate the young man or woman who is in the background interfering? If you have your younger siblings with you, kindly mute the microphone so that we don't get that feedback. Thank you so much. So the chat room is there. You can post your questions or issues there, and then we'll come back to you. But at this juncture, I would like to invite Dr. Tefa Komabu Pomayi. But then before, let me read a brief about. She calls herself a woman of color with physical disability. And this has shaped her in becoming an advocate for the disability rights of people. She has been a staunch supporter of inclusive education for people with disabilities and lobbied successfully with other advocates in Ghana for the establishment of the disability law. That's Act 715 of Ghana, as well as the ratification of the UNCRPD. She has won so many international awards, including the International Service Award for the Association of University Centers on Disabilities, Ford Foundation International Fellowship Award, and the International Alliance for Women's Award. Safako is the founder of the Enlightening and Empowering People with Disabilities in Africa. I'm going to post the rest of the profile chat room or those who want to engage that to read that. On this note, over to you, Safako. Can you share your perspective in your area of work and how you think Africa could make good the opportunity to be inclusive as far as designs and interventions on online safety will be concerned? Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm so
Morning.
sorry, my voice is so rough this morning because I just woke up. As you said, you are around afternoon and I'm in early morning. Yeah. So I thank the leaders for this opportunity also to come along with you in this discussion or in this dialogue, especially in the focus of our children. And frankly speaking, our children are really increasing, they're expanding their e-learning and social environment these days, which needs to be guided, especially the children with disabilities, as I will focus on. Yes, I think I will talk about and broadly the three domains that you have given us, which is the protection, provision, and environment, which is the right to the African child. But I will definitely link it to the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities and what we talk about in terms of education of children with disabilities is purely inclusive education, with Article 24 of the UN Convention of the Rights of People with Disabilities stresses a lot. So I will link your right or the children's right to the convention in the domain of people with disabilities. When we are talking with education or making sure that children with disabilities are very much fed or are very much given the tuition that they need in the classroom or in the house or wherever they must find themselves. It's in relation to this e-learning. I would like to look at it from three perspectives: from the barriers towards accessible e-learning, and how to design inclusive e-learning tools, and how we can make resources on e-learning very much accessible for them. So in all, it boils down to accessibility for people with disabilities, what we call accessibility. And in this provision, protection, and the environment, I will group the accessibility, which is the bigger umbrella, into three in terms of the methods, the curriculum, and the physical structure. So when we are talking about the protection, yes, people with disabilities, especially children with disabilities, need to be protected in that terms, in the methods that we are using in the classroom for these children, especially in this particular era of the COVID, that we know that the teaching methods have changed drastically. We are talking about virtual learning environment, digital repositories, multimedia, web portals, discussion boards, which a child with disabilities has no idea about, maybe on an African land, because everything turned all of a sudden into, let me say, Google Classroom. When I am talking, I'm talking from the experience of what my child is having here, and that is here in the US, and the discussions he's having with the children we left back in Ghana, the friends we have. There is a vast difference between how we are assessing this type of information, or how we are making these materials, which is the protected part of the materials that we are giving out to the children. For instance, what method do we have for when we are preparing the children to go to virtual learning now? Are we really ready as a country, or are we really ready as a teacher who is going to implement this policy that we are changing all of a sudden? When we are talking about the provision of curriculum, I'm dwelling on the materials, especially if the material that you are talking about is not accessible. And in this category, we have different categories of disabilities. There are some that we don't even have names for in the, let me use the Ghanaian setup, or in Africa. For instance, a child with learning disabilities has no place in our culture now. And now that we don't even have name for them, and they are not part of the discussion in the classroom, and we are going e-learning, Google Classroom, what does that mean to the child? Then the next one, the physical structure. I would say a person with physical disability doesn't have any need here now, because for instance, if I am talking about e-learning, it's basically revolving around, let me limit my scope within this type of disability, maybe the deaf, the blind, those with intellectual disabilities, the autistic, those group of children with disabilities we have in our classroom, they have different needs. And at this point in time, how are they secured, or how are they safe? Especially, we heard about our children right now, their interest, what they are looking for, what they want to learn, how they want to progress by using online or digital learning processes or tools. But the reality on the ground now is, how ready are we to make this protection provision environment, or to make this method, curriculum, and assessment or materials ready for them. So these are some of the barriers that we are thinking about as we continue having the dialogue that children with disabilities must have a different focus when we are planning these structures, for instance, to let school go back, children go back to school. We need to be very much clear the method we are going to use in the classroom. And I think as far as we have different method, different disability groups, some might not have immediate needs, and some might have immediate need from day one. For instance, when we take Google Classroom as an example, which is the easiest way every child is using now, the children with disabilities who have blindness, or the blind children that we have, I would say practically here, there are a lot of resources for them. Immediately, they are changing to Google Classroom for them. But I don't know how ready, for instance, we are in Africa as much as, or in that case in Ghana, where we are changing this method to online now. How ready are we with the children with blindness to have access to everything that the teacher is going to teach through the JAWS that they use? Or as much as we are not even involving them around the discussion. Another thing that I want to touch base a little is in all these discussions or in all this dialogue, we need to get in touch with the children, just as you did on this platform. I would love to encourage all of us as advocates here, as policy implementers here, or as policy advocates, or whatever we call ourselves in this platform, everybody, that children with disabilities must be around the table of discussion when we are talking about their safety. And I have a little, let me use the word guideline. It's not such as guideline for everyone, because this has to do with how close you are with the internet, or how things are readily available for you to use. But it's helpful, especially as we're having so much to do in the house. So we are having some of the resources to help the parents at home, especially children with disabilities, for instance, making your home internet safe for your child. So I have this about 7 guidelines to give, basing it in the home. For instance, when you want your child to be safe in learning environment, in terms of children with disabilities, the first point is you keep your computers in family rooms. In case of this, we are talking about how safe your child will be not to be having access to everything, as the children have talked about right now. The idea here, having your computer in the family room, will help the child to be very much safe, and you as a parent to have that child being guided. Most internet safety guidance suggests that one of the most effective ways of ensuring that the content your child views is appropriate is to place the computer in the family room. The second issue is install internet filters. There are some internet filters that you can, or internet software, which are designed. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, okay, I was hearing some background. So installing internet filters to make them secure. So there are software which are designed to control what content a user can use. It is used to restrict materials delivered over the web for the child. The third one is to install child-friendly browsers. And child-friendly browsers automatically filter results that are adults in content. Next one is to protect against viruses. Your computers are how do you call it? Computer viruses are small pieces of software that can damage your computer. Antivirus software should be installed for such a child. And install parental guidance locks on popular sites. Most browsers have video playback sites that have the capacity to lock adult content and prevent it from being viewed through the use of a PIN code. And finally, we would like to prevent postural problem. Set up your computer area in a way that encourages your child to sit in a beneficial position and demonstrate how you expect them to sit. In doing all this, we have the design or the theory or the framework, whatever name I will give to it, that we use most often, which is the UDL design or the universal learning framework, which ensures that students have multiple pathways to learn information. And these multiple pathways are for representation, for actions, for expression, and means of engagement. So in all doing this or putting all this in place for the child, you have this framework in mind because you want to make sure that the child has access to every little thing that you are doing in the classroom or everything that you are doing to educate this child, whether in the house or in the home. So I think I will pause here. If there is any question, I can take it, or if there is any clarification, I can go over again.
Right. Thank you so much, Sefako. Is it able to paste guidelines in the chat room for everyone? Kindly post it there for people who wish to document that to pick it as well.
Sorry.
Even though you will be sharing it with me.
Yeah.
Thank you. So if you have questions for Sefako with regards to children with disability, please note down the question because there's a provision for open forum after all the speakers have spoken. Then I would like to acknowledge Yoma, Chizoba, Chika, Ore, Sola, and Chris Williams, all connecting from Nigeria. Good to have you guys on board. We'll give you the microphone at the right time, so just be prepared and pay attention. Thank you. Priska. Is Priska connected? Her microphone is off. Jake, please can you connect Priska for me? Hello, Priska.
Yeah, Madam Awa, can I hear you, please? Good day, ma.
Right. Good day. So you are in the meeting room with all of us. You
Yes,
are a teacher. You are a teacher. And you are a parent.
Yes.
Before I read your bio, I would like you to be thinking about sharing with us your perspective on provisions we have in place at the moment for the protection of children. Do you consider it adequate enough? And if you are a teacher, do you happen to encounter situations in the classroom that is a bit difficult for you to handle, maybe because you are not exposed to how to do it or not? So kindly prepare yourself for that whilst I introduce you with your bio to the participant. So Madam Idu Priska Izioma from Enugu State, Southeast Nigeria, but lives at Gombe State, Northeast Nigeria, a graduate of entrepreneurial and business management, postgraduate diploma in education, and currently studying for her master's in business administration at the Gombe State University. And she is a mother of 2 daughters. So she's sharing her perspective with us as far as the safeguards in the space in Africa is concerned. Thank you, madam. You have the floor.
All right, ma. Well, currently, especially in Africa continent and Nigeria in particular, I don't think there is enough to ensure child safety online. If, for instance, currently there is COVID-19 pandemic, the kids can easily have so much access to information if care is not taken. And this information can make them or bad them in the sense that now most of the learning, including my schools, are doing offline and online learning. These kids, if you register your child on online learning, the child can easily got some misinformation that can pop up if they are studying online. So as a parent now, how can we be sure that our kids, what they are learning are not distorting them? One is we can listen to our children, let them know that they can talk safely to us. And that educating our children starts with us communicating, with communication. Tell them how important it is for them to let us know what makes them uncomfortable. Again, educating ourselves to stay up to date about the latest apps and trades that can make us protect them from such dangers. Again, we should monitor their internet use. We can limit the amount of time our children can access the internet. We can set good quality and parental control, which can allow us to block any suspicious apps that can pop up. We can chaperone them every online chat. Just like what Dr. Stefako said, we can also install mature content filtering software. Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yes, we are
Hello?
with you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. So, just like I said, more awareness needed to be created in Africa, because some teachers, like what we are discussing, some teachers are not even aware of this. Although we that live in town are more conversant with what is happening online. But what of those teachers in the village? They are not even aware of what is happening. They don't reach to stay up to date. What is happening? Some of them don't even have internet services. So ICT, digital literacy we need to create awareness first by training those teachers. They need to know. Then we need to equip them to be in a better position to give advice to children. And maybe just like we're having this meeting today, once in a while, we go to different schools, organize some in-person meetings with teachers. It will help them to recognize when kids are felt threatened online. And how can we recognize that? If you're a teacher and you are conversant with your with the kids' behavior, of course, when the child is withdrawn, you can approach the child to know what is the problem. Yes, I've been a teacher to primary 1 here, and some of my pupils, when I see some of their behaviors, I do approach them, I talk to them, and they do freely express themselves, even more than they can do to parents. Yes, your child can be more spoken to a teacher more than you as a parent. Yes, but depends on your approach to such people. So I think literacy needs to be, digital literacy we need digital literacy more in case of parents and the teachers.
Okay. So there's a